And Craig, let's follow up on that. In terms of resurrection for Jewish people, what was it?
Well, there would be a heavy burden of proof to make the claim that Jesus was resurrected. And I mean a heavy burden of proof in the thinking of Jesus' followers. They don't expect him to be resurrected right away. Someday in the future in the general resurrection, of course. But 2 or 3 days later, no, they're not expecting that. And if a wounded Jesus came staggering into their company, they would react exactly as Gary just said. They would call for a doctor. They would call for 911. They wouldn't say, our Lord is risen. That would never occur to anyone. And some try to say, well, maybe Jesus wasn't really resurrected. Maybe it was just a series of visions that some of the disciples have. Maybe it's more like a ghost story. That is condescension, I think. That is belittling the intelligence of these people. They know the difference between a ghost story and a person who's resurrected. They know the difference between a revived, wounded man and resurrection. There had to be something about Jesus when he appeared to them that convinced them, despite their expectations, Jesus was truly resurrected, and that it isn't just somebody's vision or a rumored ghost story. There had to be something very real, and I would add tangible, to convince them that Jesus was indeed resurrected.
I went and talked with Tom Wright at Westminster Abbey, who was the canon theologian there. And he also appeared on ABC's Jesus special when Peter Jennings was alive, and he was talking about the resurrection. Now, ABC cut out his words, but we had him say those words later on. He said the reason he became a Christian, he was a professor at Oxford University, the reason he became a Christian is because of the resurrection, okay? And he painted a scene that was unbelievable. Gary, you were a skeptic. You're going to Michigan State. You didn't even believe this. And then you had ended up doing your PhD in this area. What was riveting about the resurrection that nailed you?
I think what is most convincing about the resurrection data is that without virtually any exceptions, scholarship thinks you have a dead Jesus. Bagent is odd man out in this discussion. You have a dead Jesus. What you have to account for is what is conceded by virtually everybody, because you have to have a cause for their turnaround, for their radical turnaround. And what being willing to die means. We often miss this point. Being willing to die for what you proclaim. We have a lot of people in the world today who are willing to die for an ideology, political or religious. But what that means is, when you're willing to die, you believe your cause. So now you have to back up and say, why do they believe this cause? And I think the single most important event after the death of Jesus is that his earliest followers, and not just the Paul tradition, but the James, the women at the tomb, both traditions. What we have here is an experience. I'm going to say this the way critics will all affirm, is that the earliest followers of Jesus had experiences which they believed were appearances of the risen Jesus. And that single statement, that they believed they saw the risen Jesus, the data comes like this. There's at least 10 different lines of data from early reconstruction of this, arguing that they thought they saw the risen Jesus. And natural theories don't explain that away. You have to at least concede they thought. And I think that's the key, because they had experiences, and going back to why we're transformed today, we're easily transformed today by somebody else's ideology. And all I require to die is to be really sold out. The disciples were in a unique place. They were really sold out to an ideology, but they are the only ones who were present for these experiences that gave rise to the ideologies. They died for, I'd say it this way, they died for the truth or falsity of an event, not for the truth or falsity of an ideology. The ideology comes later. And to me, that's the key early proclamation on which Christianity is based.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue talking about some of these books. We've got The Jesus Dynasty by James Tabor and The Gospel of Judas. What do these have to say about the death and resurrection of Jesus? We also want to talk about what's the difference between a spiritual body and a physical body, and what was Paul talking about, and did he have just a vision? Those kinds of questions when we come right back. All right, we're back. We're talking about, did Jesus actually die on the cross, or is Michael Bagent right? It's the greatest cover-up in history. He actually got off that cross, has survived, went down to Egypt, and then over to France. And the fact is, we've got also the Gospel of Judas. And these things, Craig, put them in perspective for us. What are these things?
Well, as I see it, Dan Brown's book or Michael Bagent's latest book, this is mostly fiction with just a few facts sprinkled in. And you know what? That's what the Gospel of Judas is. And the Gospel of Judas is one among many in the 2nd, 3rd centuries and beyond. You take a couple of facts and you spin a yarn, you spin a fanciful tale, and you say, hey, folks, in private, behind closed doors, this is what Jesus really taught. But that has not a shred of claim, legitimate claim, to what Jesus really did teach in public.